We'll call the January meeting of the General Government Committee to order. As usual, we will take the consent agenda first. Let me check with the audience to see which of the demolition items need to be talked about. Is anyone here for 1111 North Patterson Avenue for Miss Spicer? No. Okay. On C2, is anyone here for 1225 Golson Avenue? No. Okay. Anyone here for 1220 Golson Avenue? Okay. We will pull that. That's C2B. I've been informed that C2C has been completed, so that can be removed from the agenda. I've been informed that C2D is working with the rehabilitation folks, so we will pull that off the agenda. And C2E, 615 Alexander Street. No? Okay. On C3, there's it's 1001 West 20th Street. No one here for that. 2018 Hannon Avenue. Nope. 611 Kynard Street. Yes, sir. Okay. All righty. And 355 Witt Street. Okay. All right. Okay. So, what of the other consent items? Do any of the committee members want to pull anything? There are 4 ordinance amendments, language amendments.
C8.
C8, okay. And I don't know, all of us were here yesterday to hear the C9 from Ms. Mazingo. Mm-hmm. Does anyone, we'll just go ahead and accept that then. Okay. So the ones that are pulled for discussion on consent agenda, C1A. No, wrong. I said that wrong. Sorry. C2B, D, and C3, C, and D are pulled for discussion, and C8. Mm-hmm. May I have a motion for the rest of the consent?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Aye.
Huh?
You have to say aye.
Oh, aye. Everybody aye, right?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm just charging ahead. Listen, we've got a long agenda, so I am going to be charging ahead and holding everybody to time limits, too. May we have C2B, please?
Ordinance ordering the demolition and or removal of structure pursuant to Chapter 10, Article 5, Section 10-203F2 of the Code of the City of Winston-Salem, repairs more than 50% of the value of the structure at 6 months. Property located at 1220 Golson Avenue in the East Ward, owned by Richard Miller.
Mr. Beautiful. Yes, sir.
Chairman Light and members of the committee, C2B is identified by Housing File 2008-030251. 1220 Golson Avenue, the property owner is Richard Miller. The conditions meet the requirements for consideration by the committee. Staff recommends that that an ordinance be adopted to demolish and remove the structure within 90 days. The estimated repair cost is $9,274. The fair market value is $12,411. And there, as a note, there have been repairs made, and I have made site visits both Monday and today at that property.
Thank you. And may I ask Mr. Miller, that work is ongoing?
Yes, ma'am.
If you'll give your name and address.
Richard Miller, 626 North Trade Street, Winston. We're about a day from being completed on this. This is why I'm asking for it to be removed and let Mr. Bailiff, and I know it's not part of what their policy is, but this is something I would like to do because we've had about 3 days of bad weather. They worked in the bad weather this morning. They're this close to being done, and I don't think the property I don't think any longer that it meets the conditions for demolition at this point. Also, the estimates, Mr. Bailiff and I can debate all day long about estimates for repairs. The repairs have been about less than $2,000, and we're about 1 day away from being completed for all the little, check items and I've actually asked that some other things be done while they were there that were not even on the list. So I've gone a little above and beyond what I've been asked to do.
Thank you. Ms. Councilman?
Yes, Mr. Bailiff, where are my pictures? You know how I am about this. I get these pictures, but if someone's done something that we have now gone on to look at it, you looked at it, somebody looked at it, and my other question is, and I'll save that one for Mr. Miller, but when we showed the before pictures in the documents for the council, we need, and if doing the repair work, the owners have done something, like if you showed me this side of this building, I needed to see if this is in my book as a picture, and if they've done something, I need to see the after picture of what they've done. You've done this for us before. Because, see, I don't know what they've done. This is what they're doing? This is it, Mr. Bailiff?
These pictures here, you'll see my date and time stamp, which from today.
Okay. Are you and your staff happy with this, Mr. Bailiff? I'm just asking. Again, you're the subject matter expert on this. It's not like, don't get me wrong, in the North Ward, I do get in the car and go drive by, but I don't drive by all of these properties. But, my question then to Mr. Miller is, why did it take so long for it to get to us, to prompt you to do something? That's since I've been on this committee, the past almost going on 5 years, and I know your staff and you guys, you deal with this all the time, but I don't understand it. I kind of, in my mind, kind of tells me what the deal is, but I don't get it that we get to this point that owners come to us when they're in the 19th hour of us doing something proactive to, and I know people say, well, you're going to tear down a house and leave a vacant lot. Again, I got a vacant lot beside my house, and I'm okay with it. Please.
Well, Ms. Adams, one of the problems in this area is constant vandalism. We have made repairs consistently on this property over the years. We've replaced almost 50 window lights that were broken out by neighborhood kids in the area. The neighbors have not helped us very much in stopping this problem. There gets to a point when you kind of like throw up your hands. That's not the answer I know anybody wants to hear, but I need help out of the neighbors to identify when people are loitering on the property and damaging the property. Most of these violations were because of vandalism. I'm lucky they didn't take the plumbing out. I'm just really lucky on that one. And we've had issues with that. But I have fought a lot of vandalism in these areas over the years, and short of boarding these houses up, it's kind of self-defeating, really. And I'm just doing this because this is what you guys want to do, and I hope the house doesn't sit and get damaged again. We need some efforts to ramp up policing in these areas to get the neighbors safer. Neighbors have got to take a little interest and help us out, because I can't be there 24 hours a day to see what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntosh.
Richard, hang on a second. Question for you. How long has this house been vacant?
It's been vacant 7 to 8 years, give or take. And I'd have to look at my records to
And
be
why
exact.
why has it been vacant?
Sorry.
Why has it been vacant?
Why has it been vacant? We did some work on it when it became vacant, and the market just wasn't renting. We just had very little. We've got an overstock, as a matter of fact.
You chose
property.
not to repair it into...
Well, there were repairs made on it initially, but after the vandalism kept going, I just kind of like threw up my hands and go like, what am I going to do? We caught several individuals breaking into the back of the house, which we've been able to keep secured, but still, that's one of the issues that we're dealing with.
Mr. Bessie.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bailiff, you've been out there as recently as today.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us on the list of code deficiencies which ones remain uncompleted?
As of my visit about 1 o'clock today, the items that remain are the paint, the installation of screens on the windows, repair of the soffit or fascia, and the repair replacement of the front porch floor. Mr. Miller, in conversation since my visit, has indicated that the floor was completed. The soffit and fascia was underway at the time that I was out there, and the screens were in the process of being installed while I was out there at 1 o'clock.
What about the the paint?
Paint, I didn't observe them painting today. That could have been due to the rain that we've had. They were not painting today.
Is there anything about that list that would pose a substantial difficulty to completion within 30 days?
No.
Be completed this week.
Thank you.
I would just like for this, that's why, the reason, Mr. Bessie, I want to get it off the table. I don't have to come down here and make sure that once it's Mr. Bailiff and I get it agreed to, get everything finalized this week, that if it goes back to council, somehow 6 months later it ends up on a demolition order's been filed for something that wasn't filed, that bit me a year ago, where I got something completed, and somehow the city secretary still filed a demolition order should have never been filed. So that's why I'm trying to be funny about this a little bit.
May I have opinions from the committee? One suggestion I would make is that we go ahead and adopt the order, and if it is completed by Tuesday, which will be our next council meeting, that we can then drop it off
Are you comfortable with that?
Well, that means I got to come back and attend another meeting.
Not necessarily. Are you comfortable getting the... Am I out of order here, asking this question?
No, that's quite all right.
Are you comfortable having the work completed by this coming Tuesday?
Oh, yeah, it'll be, hopefully, if the weather's good, by Friday.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
Yes. How do I put that? I move leaving it on the agenda or the motion here, but pulling it from council if the work is completed prior to this coming Tuesday, which would not require you to show up.
Is this in the North Ward?
No.
South.
East Ward? I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion.
Okay.
Again, because my other peers aren't here, if you notice the list never changes as to the location of these issues. And just like crime, yeah, I'm the person now. The locations never change, and it's probably been like this ever since I can remember. Moving forward, it seems to me, Mr. Garrity, sometimes it's like a game, and I'm gonna call it like I see it. It's a game, The property gets fixed. It's been since '08. But if nobody rents it, leases it, or whatever, we'll be back again. I'd like to see a report on those properties that we save and we give like a second chance. I'd like to see how many of those are still going to rotate back to Mr. Bailiff and them again in this council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so let's have then the next, oh, wait, we need to vote, didn't we? I keep forgetting about that. Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
3-1. The next item, C2D, no, we've already,
C3D?
C2D.
Yeah.
C2. Now, didn't I?
that's the rehab one. Okay. It's
C3C. C3C.
C. Okay, all right. It's Mr. Brown, is that right? Or is this the one you're to speak to, or is that, have I got the wrong one again? Mr. Bailiff?
You want me to read it?
C3C.
Okay. It's ordinance ordering the Community and Business Development Department of the City of Winston-Salem to remove or demolish structure unfit for human habitation and otherwise to effectuate the purpose of Chapter 10, Article 5 of the Winston-Salem City Code, repairs more than 65% of the value of the structure. Located at 611 Kynard Street in the East Ward, owner Michael R. Douglas.
Mr. Bailiff?
Chairman Light, members of the committee, C3C is represented by case number 2013-010-638-611 Kiner Drive. Owner is Michael R. Douglas. This property meets the requirements for consideration for demolition to be, and staff recommends that it be removed or demolished. The estimated cost of repair is $26,001. The fair market value is $8,000. It exceeds the 65% value.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Brown, is that correct? Yeah, okay. If you would like to come up to the table. And your relation to the owner?
I represent Mr. Douglas in this matter and also in the pending litigation against USAA Insurance Company.
Please go ahead.
All right. Property burned down roughly middle of last year. My understanding was a childhood home. The majority of Mr. Douglas's effects were there. So not only was the structure badly damaged, basically what he owned, what he had gotten from his mother's estate and from his brother's estate was destroyed in the fire. Mr. Douglas is employed as a traveling car salesman. He goes from big sale to big sale. This was a home base for him. This has rendered him essentially homeless. USAA to this point has neither offered repair or replacement for this particular structure, hence the litigation. What he has sent me here to do this afternoon is to request that he be allowed to litigate this matter so he can repair what's there. I have talked with him about repair versus replace, but this seems to have some sentimental value for him, so I would tender that to this body. He wants to have his home here, and if it's demolished, that takes that away.
Thank you. Committee, do you have any questions of Mr. Brown? Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, where is Mr. Douglas living now, please?
Currently,
Yes.
he has to stay with friends. And since he is a traveling salesperson, there is quite a bit of time when he's on the road various places. But here, he has to stay with friends because obviously he can't stay there.
I'm having some difficulty telling how badly damaged the interior is.
It's badly damaged. In fact, I think the floor, my understanding is, floor is unsafe, contents mostly destroyed. actually looks worse on the inside than it does on the outside.
Just candidly,
Yes,
I can very much appreciate someone's emotional desire to to repair a childhood home, but I question how realistic it is in a case where the interior was essentially destroyed by fire, which is the impression I'm getting.
yes, sir. That would be correct.
And I wonder how essentially how long it will remain in this condition if we agree to pull this under kind of the indefinite hope that there will be a successful resolution to litigation that will permit renovation on site.
I can tell you that in the litigation process, we're currently in discovery, and defendants served his first set of interrogatories, which we're answering. But not that there's ever a simple case, but it's a matter of was there a policy and was there a loss and was he covered? Now, USAA may argue it's more complicated than that, but I don't see that. As far as how long it's going to take, go through the legal system, I don't think it's going to take years and years and years, but I don't think it's going to happen next month.
What did the policy provide in this case?
Actually, policy, my understanding is that the policy provides for repair. Because in this case, it might actually be cheaper to demolish it. But he paid extra so that he could have it repaired. So that's another item of at issue.
Would you be in a position to provide the city staff with a copy of the contract, of the policy, so that they could evaluate the realistic potential for pursuing repair?
I'd be glad to. I'll contact my client and get that copy.
Yeah, thank you. I know this neighborhood. It's right around the corner from where I went to elementary school. The development is Skyland Park.
You're right.
I see where this happened a year ago. I mean, is that correct? I mean, that's the date I have here. When did this happen?
Roughly the middle of last year.
Councilmember Adams?
Yeah.
We had started a case already, and there was a fire that occurred, I believe, in the month of May. That's why we upgraded this into a 65% category in June of last year.
Well, I'm confused because it's got a date in here of January 12th, 2013.
That's when they started the,
And that's when we started a case that was an unfit case. It was after that in May, I believe it was late May, that a fire occurred that brought the damage up to 65%, and we issued a new notice of hearing with the 65% declaration on it.
Okay.
So the case did start in January. It was just not at a 65%. It was compounded or made worse by the fire in May.
Fire. Okay. Do we know where the fire originally started at in this house? Do we have any idea? I mean, some area of the house has got to be more damaged than the other areas. I mean,
Yes, ma'am. The best of my recollection, there was an area that indicates that that's where the fire started. It wasn't in the kitchen or anything like that. It was in a bedroom, and clothes. What started was the fire started with clothes, and then worked its way.
spread.
Yeah.
And you're saying the litigation that's going on now, the process you're in the process, but you don't know, you have no clear whatever when this process could be actually go to court or whatever. No?
No, ma'am. With litigation, while I consider this to be relatively simple, either he had the policy or didn't, it was enforced or it wasn't. The insurance company is taking the tact of requiring a lot of interrogatories, which I frankly don't think have anything to do with the case. But it's the process that you have to go through. And because it's in Superior Court, you also have a mediation process, and we're not even close to mediation yet.
I guess my concern, Madam Chair, is again, is the appearance of the neighborhood. You know, we're asking people who own homes, and everybody knows, again, it's unfortunate that this happened, but we understand the responsibility of home ownership. And you're saying this, that he's a traveling person, his employee.
Yes, ma'am.
Is he able to do anything to make this situation better? I mean, is there something he can do to start the pre-work? I mean, I had a situation similar to this in my ward, whereas for me, I expected the owner or the person that lived there to be able to do something to try to remedy the situation for the neighborhood. Because it's one thing to feel empathy or sorrow and compassion, but it's another thing when people work every day and they come home and they got to look at this for over a year, you know.
I think that what is occurring in this case, as a practical matter, is while this is home-based and he does receive some compensation for wherever he's selling at, it's taking what he's making to live because he doesn't have a house. He doesn't have anywhere to stay. I would be less than forthright if I tried to represent how much he actually makes, because I don't actually know. But from what I understand, his money is taken up with just trying to make it from day to day.
One more question, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am.
Mr. Bailiff or City Manager, have we ever had a situation like this before? And if we have, what has been the precedence, or have we done this? Have we had a situation where someone's home was destroyed by fire or a disaster, flood, something, and they were not able to, and we put the house in the process? What have we done in the past? How have we dealt with this? Because
We have followed the minimum housing code by bringing it to City Council at the appropriate time for your decision.
okay.
In this case, I would also like to add in that the boarding that you see on there was boarded, this house was boarded by city staff to prevent any further damage to the structure.
Okay.
So we as city staff have attempted to minimize any exterior impact.
Thank you.
Mr. Bessie.
Gentlemen, was the house actually owner occupied prior to the fire last year?
It was occupied by him when it was here, when he was on the road. Now, that's one of the items of contention between my client and the insurance company. They tried to say it wasn't owner-occupied. He received his mail there. When he came back to Winston, that's where he stayed.
Let me ask Mr. Bailiff, before you upgraded the case to a demolish, when you had the previous status of the case going forward, was this for a combination of unfits, or was it minors?
It was a combination of unfits.
Could staff determine how regularly, if at all, it appeared to be occupied at that time?
There's no indication in the record, and that gap is basically from January to about May.
Can you give us some of the most severe items that were prior to the fire, unfit problems?
Screens on the windows. Screens on the windows were the main ending was the unfit at that point in time. The rest of the items were minor. Those items were defective siding, reglazing of windows, and paint.
Okay. I guess my inclination would, in the absence of Councilmember Montgomery, would be to defer action to next month. In the meantime, ask Mr. Brown if he could provide to our staff a copy of the policy so that we could get sort of a sense of, from our legal counsel on the potential for a settlement or litigation win that would provide resources necessary to actually repair.
Is that a motion?
I'll submit.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
C3D. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Property located at 355 Witt Street, located in the Southwest Ward. Owners Irvin Kenneth Clay and Richard Simpson.
Item C3D is identified as case number 2013-091533, 355 Witt Street. Property owners Irvin Kenneth Clay and Richard Simpson. This property, the estimated cost of repairs exceeds 65% of the value. The estimated cost of repair is $262,790. The estimated fair market value is $65,000. It's staff's recommendation that an ordinance be adopted to remove or demolish the structure.
Mr. Bessie, is this in your ward?
Yes. I have actually questions for Mr. Bell.
Okay, please.
Mr. Bell, I see that the process that's before us today was initiated last September. Had there been any previous, by record, efforts to obtain repairs or work on this property?
We contacted Mr. Clay because if you'll notice on the picture there, that was maybe, I don't see it now, but there was a fire indicator. If you're familiar with the fire indicators on the external outside of buildings where it's a red box,
Yeah.
and this one had a red box with an X in it, and that indicates that the fire department will not fight the fire from inside. They will not go inside. They consider it to be structurally unsound. We talked with Mr. Clay, and we used it as a training vehicle for our non-residential code because we have not had that many sites to address on the non-residential code. And this because of the pictures provided by the fire department at that time, gave us probable cause to ask that. Mr. Clay allowed us in to take a look at the non-residential code, to look at the structure and to assess it from the inside. He also gave us a training op to discuss the difference between the non-residential code and the minimum housing code and how they may be applied either separately or in conjunction with each other.
Had there been earlier cases or citations of conditions from from outside the property, the external?
There have been a number of notices of violations issued for high grass and weeds. There have been some notices issued for shrubbery. However, we've not had the probable cause to enter upon a property where it's been posted as no trespassing prior to February.
Do you have a record regarding how long those other complaints had been being made with regard to this property. The other complaints and citations, the high grass, the shrubbery.
It covers a number of years. There have been a number of community complaints concerning the upkeep of the property.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Clay.
Mr. Clay, certainly, we'd like to hear from you, please.
Where?
Right there, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm new to this ball game, so I don't know if I'm overdoing it or what. But my name is Ken Clay, resident of Winston-Salem since 1956. I want to thank the committee for giving me an opportunity to address the property at 355 Witt Street. Commercial structure formerly Ellis Ashburn Stationer and Easy Data, in case you're not familiar. My brother and I inherited the property and intend to sell it, but have been waiting for market conditions to approve. We're asking that the committee and/or city council give consideration to less drastic solutions than demolishing the entire structure. The code seems to provide for less drastic solutions. I'll cover some of those later. Up front, I want to acknowledge that some remediation is called for, and we are willing to do remediation. The question is what remediation is appropriate. In discussions with commercial real estate agents and some prospective clients, there are a wide range of possible uses of the property. The facade and street-facing part of the structure is the former Highland Builders Supply building that sat at the corner of Stratford and Knollwood and was moved to accommodate McDonald's moving to that location. They have since moved to Thruway, and that location is now a bank. When it was moved, a large metal Butler building-style warehouse was erected on a concrete slab behind the original building and attached to it. This part of the structure has no issues cited in the inspection report. It is the older facade portion that has issues. All of the possible uses can reasonably be boiled down to three categories. One, demolish and build a totally new building. Two, remove the facade portion and rebuild that, maintaining the warehouse. Or renovate the entire current structure. If demolition is ordered, it reduces the potential class of buyers to those who want a vacant piece of land. For those who have expressed interest in the property in the past, that represents about 15 or 20%. This is one reason that we have done little to the property, is we don't know what the ultimate buyer will choose to do. In talking with Mr. Bailiff, my understanding is that the primary reasons calling for demolition are as follows, and he may add to this. He found the building doors open, therefore considered it abandoned by code. There is one large and one small hole in the roof in the facade structure, allowing the building to further deteriorate. Safety issues of a hole in the floor if the building is left open, the possibility of attracting vagrants. First, let me say my brother and I are willing to attend to these issues, including putting sturdier, more secure doors on the front of the building. As to being abandoned, the building was not left open, it was broken into. We've repaired the doors and resecured them quickly. As to vagrants, we have only had that one incident in the last few years since taking measures to better secure the warehouse entrances and boarding other doors and windows when we were having a vagrant problem there. And there are various police reports on that, but those have been in the past. One more thing in regard to safety, we have met with the fire marshal and posted the appropriate sign designation on the building so that no firefighters would enter the building and be exposed to harm if a fire occurs. They would only fight the fire from the outside. Another finding was that repairs exceed 65% of the value. I've not had the opportunity to get quotes, but will do so if needed in finding a middle path short of demolition. This kind of went on through the Christmas period with different stuff, and Bruce and I weren't able to talk until, earlier last week, middle of last week? Early last week or the week before. Another thing Mr. Bailiff told me was that by being abandoned, the code calls for the building to meet residential standards under 10-197, rather than Section 10-213, which the rules and regulations prescribed by this division shall be known and may be cited as the vacant non-residential building and structure code of the City of Winston-Salem. He works with the code more in a day than I'm ever likely to, but in my multiple readings of this section, I could not find any clause that stipulates this reversion from one building type to another. I now refer you to Section 10-214, part of which states, these standards only address conditions that are dangerous and injurious to public health, safety, and welfare, and identify circumstances under which a public necessity exists for the repair, closing, or demolition of such buildings or structures. In light of that, there appear to be three options. What my brother and I would like the committee council to recommend or order that the building be closed, contingent on the safety and security repairs mentioned above. Such closure is also addressed in 10-207. This would serve the purposes of public safety while preserving for us the widest range of possible buyers without undue financial burden or spending money on repairs that might not be of value to the ultimate buyer. It also would enhance revenues in three ways. One, tax value would not be decreased, leading to a loss of revenue. Two, a likely higher sales price would produce more revenue on the tax stamps. And three, the city would not incur the cost of demolition, which we cannot afford at this time.
Okay, Mr. Clay, thank you. Your time is sort of taken up by this. That's time for the
know
committee.
what the time limit was.
No, it's certainly
Anyway,
past
I
now.
thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I did want to credit the inspections division. I have worked with them with numerous properties in the past and everything else. We've got a very good relationship. I'm always looking to do the compliant thing. I just want to do the reasonable thing.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Clay, I'm curious, have you had an appraisal done on the property?
I have not. We have not had any recent appraisals done. I've been keeping some pulse as to where and what's been happening, with it. Back before my mother passed, we had offers like $500,000, but I couldn't get her to say yes, no, or counter.
Right. When was that?
This would have been probably in between 2006 and 2008.
Okay. I guess my question is, I'm a commercial realtor. I do commercial and residential. And I think it would be very difficult to find a comp for a building in that condition where a buyer would place any value on the structure.
I tend to agree with you.
Okay. If you could come back up,
Oh, I'm
please,
sorry.
and answer.
I tend to agree with you on that. However, some of the interested parties have been interested in preserving that old Highland Builders look and had some interesting ideas of what they were going to do with it. Most likely, somebody's either going to tear it down and totally rebuild or use the Butler building portion. And that's why I say the demolition is all in the forward street-facing old Highland Builder Supply structure. None of the cited items apply to the Butler building portion. There is a wall separating those two sections with an access door. That we would have to improve the security on that access door, but if it does have to go to demolition, I would ask just demolish the part that has the safety issue problems now.
Committee members, what is your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I certainly am sympathetic with the difficulties of Mr. Clay and his brother to market a property in this condition. I have to say, however, that as you can see from the photographs, that this is demonstrably in an unsafe condition for the community. I've received multiple complaints from neighboring property owners that that it is unsafe, that that does attract break-ins and folks who are desperate trying to live in a situation where they are put at risk by doing that. In the case of a further fire, as you can tell, our personnel wouldn't even enter the building, and the risk to neighboring structures would be greater, I think, as a result. I think that this is a clear situation where demolition is the appropriate option, and I would move approval of the recommended order.
There was some work done with the fire department. Is there any difference in financial impact for the fire department to come in and use this building as some sort of a training opportunity to actually burn it versus tear it down and put it in a landfill?
The fire department has not contacted us. That's kind of on an as-needed basis by the fire department for their training needs. Certainly we can contact them. Most of the time they are training on residential structures, at least that we're aware of.
But the conversation about the fact that they don't have much commercial property to work to train it may offer an opportunity and may lower the financial impact, Mr. Clay.
Okay, but then, if I'm correct, are you through? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. The motion is to adopt staff's recommendation for demolition. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we're almost through with the consent agenda. Councilmember Adams wanted C8.
Ordinance amending Chapter A of the Unified Development Ordinances to revise the definitions of agricultural production crop and agricultural production livestock, UDO 246, proposal of Planning and Development Services staff, recommended by Planning Board.
Thank you. Just a question. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. All I want you to do is to give us a brief snapshot of what this UDO, the changes that we made, and why, so that the public knows.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Essentially, UDO 146 comes on the heels of a lot of public discussion, community discussion about urban agricultural, urban food access, and so forth. And one of the things that we noticed in looking at what the current ordinances that we have in place now either allow or don't allow, as the case may be, was a technical glitch in the terminology for a use that's allowed in the city called agricultural production crop or agricultural production livestock, which required that a farm be designated as a bona fide farm. And bona fide farm, by its definition, applies only within the county's jurisdiction. It carries with it certain connotations and certain privileges. For example, bona fide farms in the county do not have to meet certain building code requirements. But because that provision doesn't exist in the city enabling legislation, then that term was really inappropriate. Someone could not meet that requirement, and therefore we wanted to simply substitute comparable language in the city's portion of the ordinance that deals with that use classification to make it something that could be readily enforced and understood. So it's really a substitution of comparable language, 3-acre minimum farm, and essentially we kept it as a technical correction. It's possible that there may be other ordinance amendments that may come to the council in the future as it is determined whether or where or what circumstances local guards and so forth may or may not work with the current ordinances. But right now, it seems like the ordinances are able to accommodate most of the requests for local gardens and farms and so forth, but we did want to be sure and take care of this technical matter.
One more question. So as an example, if I have 3 acres of land in the city and I want to start a dairy farm, can I do that?
No.
That's what I knew that.
That's a short answer. I guess technically if someone wanted to rezone the property, they had acreage, they could ask for agricultural production crop, but it'd only be allowed in the agricultural zoning district, which there's none of which currently in the city. So it'd be a decision from the council to create a district that would allow that use that it currently doesn't exist in the city currently.
Thank you. Move for approval, Madam Chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the general.
Can't start my dairy farm, okay.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Item G1, ordinance amending Chapters A and B of the Unified Development Ordinances to revise regulations pertaining to transmission towers, UDO 244, proposal of American Towers LLC and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, recommended by Planning Board. This item was continued from the December meeting of the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Light and members of the committee. Just to give a little background before we get into the substantive changes since last time, staff did give a presentation on UDO 244 at the December General Government Committee. The committee members did ask staff at that time to research a variety of questions prior to this meeting. We put together a research book, and that has been distributed to you in your packets, and we'll be glad to answer questions on that as it comes up. Staff was also asked by the committee to schedule a meeting with the petitioners, the ordinance opponents, and basically try and determine if there were potential points of compromise that could help move this amendment forward. A meeting was held at the planning offices on December 8th. The petitioners, the opposition, Chair Light, and the city staff, planning staff, and the attorney's office were in attendance. And overall, there was a compromise ordinance drafted at this meeting that was generally supported by all parties present. And what I'm going to do now is just go through the substantive changes that came out as a result of that meeting. The first thing that was added at that meeting was a hierarchy of antenna and tower types was included in the ordinance. And the purpose of that was to show the antenna types and tower types that would only require a staff approval to try and incentivize those as a first line of choices when new towers or antennas were proposed. And then the second category would be just new freestanding towers, which would require anything from staff approval up to council approval with a special use permit. All towers in residential zoning under this proposed revision would require a special use permit from the elected body. This is a substantial change from the version that you all heard in December, where a Board of Adjustment special use permit or even a staff permit could be used for certain residential zoning districts. Another major change that came out of this meeting was that photo simulations would be required for concealed towers. Those are the towers that you may remember from our last meeting that have no external antenna, look like a faux tree or a flagless flagpole, that sort of thing. Any of those towers over 120 feet in a residential zoning would be required to show a photo simulation. And staff actually did some photo simulations and put those in your packets, so you have an idea of what that looks like. Similarly, photo simulations would be required for all monopole towers, regardless of height, in residential districts. The reason there's no height stipulation here is at the meeting, folks felt that monopole towers were potentially more intrusive in the neighborhood by their external antennas. And so as a result, everyone agreed to do photo simulations for any of those. Another major change was relating to lattice towers in the IP institutional public district. I believe specifically Councilmember Bessie at the last meeting expressed some concerns about lattice towers in IP. Folks at the December 18th meeting agreed to prohibit that type of tower under any circumstance or any height limit in IP to help rectify that situation. The next point of change was that relating to setbacks from public streets. In the current existing UDO requirements and what the petitioner proposed last month, there's only a 40-foot setback between a tower and a public street. At the December 18th meeting, that was changed to a setback equal to tower height. So if you have, for example, an 199-foot tower, that setback would go from 40 feet to 199 feet. So there's much more of a spatial separation between the visual impacts of these towers on public streets. Another change generated at this meeting was alternative compliance for setbacks. It was previously granted by the Board of Adjustment in all cases in the December draft. The group agreed to change this to the elected body, in this case, City Council, being the arbiter of those decisions. And again, that was done to help give neighborhood residents a sense of greater control and oversight in these matters. Just 2 more points. The City Attorney's Office recommended that we insert some specific statutory legal language with regard to co-locations and tower approval time limits. So we made that change. And the final change is that the proposed property owner notification radius for community meetings on towers was increased from 300 feet in its December version up to 500 feet. And this was done to provide greater group of areas for notification, and also put that in line with what we require for zoning cases, which is 500 feet. So at that point, I know folks who attended the meeting on both sides are here in the audience, and staff will be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Kirk before we ask the other stakeholders to speak? Yes.
Just one confirming question. On page 66, the setback, the language in red, item D. All towers, including concealed towers on vacant lots in residential districts, shall be set back a minimum distance equal to tower height from public street. As I read this, that means in any district.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That means, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Basically, any zoning district, the
okay.
tower has to be
Yeah.
set back from public street, at least the height of the tower.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
No questions?
Yeah. Councilmember Montgomery, you have, okay. All right, I'd like to go ahead and thank you, Kirk. We'll probably have more questions. I'd like to go ahead and ask if the petitioners would like to take 5 minutes to speak. And if you'll give your name and address,
Sure.
please.
Tom Johnson, address is 4141 Park Lake Avenue, Suite 200 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Here on behalf of the petitioners. I won't take 5 minutes. I'll just say I appreciate Councilmember Light's leadership and bringing us together at the meeting to develop this compromise. And I truly believe it's a true compromise, because I don't, there were sacrifices on both sides. I don't think either side's completely happy with what happened, and I have to say it's an effective compromise as a result. So I'm available to answer any questions you may have, but again, has been represented by staff. We are comfortable with the amended version as it's come forth.
Thank you. Any questions?
Comments?
Comment?
Yes, comment. When this started, the process, I think all of the council members recognized, as well as this committee and staff, that there had to be some compromise here.
Right.
You know, we know that we need the technology. We use it every day. I would dare to say there's probably not a person in this room that doesn't have a smartphone or a laptop or iPad or computer or anything cable at their house.
Sure.
But because the world is changing, as we said, we now needed to bring everybody to the table, specifically the community, because they felt a sense of, well, we know we got to have it, but we need to talk about this. And again, I talked to your organizations. This is no different than any of the other ordinances that have changed or had to be modified over the years, whether it's the sign ordinance or the tree ordinance or the no parking on the lawn ordinance. It goes with time. But again, thanks to your organization, thanks to all the stakeholders, the Neighborhood Alliance, and all of the others, particularly staff, thank you so much for being so patient to make this a win-win in the community. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're certainly welcome. And I didn't want to be remiss in saying your staff has been excellent. They have really, really worked hard with us to effectively help reach the compromise. I have to give Kirk a special credit, because he really worked hard in pulling all of this together, and I really thank his efforts in doing this. So thank you very much. Available for any other questions or comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Would someone, would Eric, is that, or Melinda, whichever? Both. Okay. Tag team, all right, please.
I am Eric Bushnell. I live on Walker Road in the North Ward, and I am the president of the Winston-Salem Neighborhood Alliance. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the process. Neighborhood Alliance members appreciate that you took our concerns seriously enough to further amend the text amendment. After considering and digesting the changes from December, we do see three elements that we would like to see get some further attention in order to craft a really effective policy. The first of those elements is the photo simulations. Those are required for certain tower requests, and that's a good thing. Those should have some explicitly stated standards and parameters. That's the best way to ensure that what they simulate and what you see when you decide is what we really get. And those kinds of standards would be appropriate distances from the tower sites to the photo viewpoints, lens settings and photographic parameters to ensure that the simulation matches the human eye, and some guidance for picture-taking locations to ensure that the simulations accurately predict the experience of the people who live and walk and drive near the tower sites in neighborhoods. The second element has to do with the hierarchy of placement and attempting to emphasize interest in co-location. And that element I would like Melinda Dunnigan to explain. She has drafted that part, and I think she can explain it better than I.
Melinda?
Hi, Melinda Dunnigan, 1875 Mallard Lakes Drive, Winston-Salem, 27106. In looking at the document that showed in ordinance language what we had talked about at the meeting, I just had a further question about the part of the ordinance that allows placements of antennae without a special use permit. That's the part where you can place antennae without going with only a permit from the zoning officer. And there are a number of these that are listed in the ordinance, and they include co-location on an existing tower, DAS systems, and co-location on existing utility infrastructure. And when I looked at this, I called up Kirk Erickson just to get further clarification to understand what that would mean. And what it would mean, according to Kirk, is that you could do, for example, co-location on existing utility infrastructure without having to co-locate on an existing tower if there was an existing co-location available. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that that was allowed in this version. To me, I think that it's a better use of resources to co-locate when you can. And most ordinances that I've seen always require co-location. This ordinance requires co-location for if you're building a new freestanding tower. That's what the later language in the ordinance requires, that you have to co-locate. But if you're going to place an antenna in some other existing location without building a new tower, you can choose to do something besides co-locate. And I just think, and that I bring this to your attention to consider whether or not you think that's a good idea. What I would like to see is co-location required first, all the time. And I think it might be a mistake if we were to allow that, because then, for example, you might see a lot of antennae placed on power lines, for example, which you see more and more of that these days, when they could have placed them on, say, a stealth tower, and then it would be totally concealed. So you're getting more proliferation of antennae that way that are visible.
Thanks.
If you'd like to include that, Melinda believes that it would take just a few words added to one section to make that clearer. And so finally, the third element is to reinforce the conversation we had about including something more comprehensive in legacy, our comprehensive planning document. And WSNA members strongly believe that some guiding principles and some guiding vision for towers and antenna must be explicitly stated in legacy. That can be a way to establish and describe a vision of what we want and not just what we might allow. And I recall, for example, in discussions with council members and planning staff and the meetings in December, the distributed antenna systems, for example, were somewhat difficult to integrate into the hierarchy in a way that really emphasizes their desirability to council members. So stating community preferences explicitly in legacy in the comprehensive long-term planning document can create a more detailed framework to assess tower requests under the more specific UDO language. So to recap, photo simulations should have explicit standards. We're concerned about the specific language for co-location and the permits for that. And we'd like to reinforce and emphasize that there needs to be some supplemental language within legacy as well as the detailed UDO document. So, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Questions? Are people clear on the co-location question? Because I must admit, when we talked about a hierarchy, that's what I expected as a ABCD hierarchy of this is better, this is next best, this is least best. So would there be any problem? And I'm on page 65A at the very top of the page to actually put those in order. Co-location on existing pole, concealed on concealed towers or concealed within a building, then the utility co-location and the distributed antenna system. Those are little boxes that mount on like telephone poles and throughout a neighborhood. So that would be, in fact, a hierarchy of choice.
Question, Madam Chair. Maybe I'm just caught up in process. I don't know. But why wasn't that looked at when this was put together in the final draft?
Well,
I mean, did the parties not see this? I mean, did they get a draft of this before we did and that they could have looked at? I'm just asking because process tells me if it's here, now we're saying we want to prioritize it or whatever. I'm like, well, why didn't we do that before?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a question of being overlooked in my case. So,
and how does the petitioner feel about
well, and we will definitely ask that. The other item that we want to ask the petitioner is the to be able to put language for the photo simulation about having it really, I don't know the right words. The lens length needs to be what the eye of the beholder would be.
They're looking for
and just to be able to put that in the language.
Right. And I'm happy to address these. I'm like Councilmember Adams. I mean, we did go through a lot of this at the meeting, and I felt like we had everything addressed.
I thought you did.
But I'm happy to address these. On photo simulations, we have to present evidence. We have to present it accurately. We're not, anything we present to council, certainly we're going to present accurately. I have to say the professionals that we use to do the photo simulations do extremely accurate photo simulations. And in fact, in deference to the packet you had, they're much better than what you saw. And it's very precise. And I would put their work up against anyone. I feel like the decision-making body makes that decision. I think if you start going into trying mean, just like trying to tell me as an attorney how I need to present my case, or telling the professional who does a photo simulation how he's supposed to do his settings, or telling a surveyor how he's supposed to set his equipment to do it. I don't think that's necessary. I think what we have is perfectly well and good and will be accurate when it comes before you. The hierarchy, I mean, in terms of the co-location and the hierarchy, co-locations now are governed by federal and state law. There's a lot of that. I mean, in terms of locating on utility poles or co-locating on any existing structure, basically that's preempted at this point by federal and state law in terms of what you can, to what degree you can do the co-locations. And in fact, the reason those end up being administrative approvals is there's no choice. Under federal and state law, there's really no choice on those co-locations within the parameters of a non-substantial modification. And there's standards within the state law that speak to that. And that would fit full well into some of these utility pole co-locations or that were spoken to. So it's kind of out of our hands. In terms of putting something in legacy, and legacy's a plan, I mean, it's up to the board as far as whether they want to make consistencies with that. I know, comprehensive plan amendments are not usual, but certainly in the change, as Councilmember Adams very ably spoke to, technology is becoming a part of our lives, and obviously legacy doesn't specifically address technology, and I'm fine. I think it's well and good and would not be a bad idea to put it in legacy that part of the infrastructure of the community is towers.
Yeah, well, and in fact, that would have to be a direction from council, I think, to the planning staff. Jeff, you had
I'm just curious if you could walk me through the decision-making process on a co-location. This hierarchy, walk me through what you have to do by federal law.
I mean, and it's not unusual. We do it every time. Obviously, the path of least resistance, especially with the existence of the federal and state law we have now, as an industry, we're going to look for co-location first. We're going to look for the easiest way to get the service to the customer. So we go through that hierarchy every time. And when we come, if we were to bring a petition to the elected body for approval, we're going to justify why we couldn't co-locate or why we couldn't stealth it more, because the elected body can put conditions on us if indeed we come before the elected body and don't provide significant stealthing or don't fully do our job. You're going to police that. So I feel like that is already addressed. That's why I felt good about the compromise, because it was addressed in the compromise. I felt like it was good. I felt like we're in good shape, because you as the elected body are going to have the opportunity to review it and come up with a determination.
Just an interjection here. In fact, this item A on page 65 is for the antennae that would require only zoning officer approval and not city council or elected body approval. And that's what I think the Neighborhood Alliance was saying, that since it is not coming before council to approve co-location or DAS or put it on the telephone pole, that those ought to be ranked in order of it's just a wording thing.
Well, no, but the thing is, and I defer to your counsel, but on those co-locations, federal and state law is going to allow some of those co-locations regardless of a hierarchy. So if we look and we follow within the parameters of federal and state law to do the co-locations, and that is not extending the height within those parameters, regardless of the hierarchy, it's going to happen anyway.
Okay. All right.
So that's my only point is in that regard. So the reason that's staff level approval is that those are items that really aren't within this city's jurisdiction, except to make sure that I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, which staff is very able at being able to do.
Okay. Councilmember Bessie, you had a question?
Yeah, on this particular item, the co-location, you've got identified on page 65 in that proposed new subsection A at the top of the page, you've got 4 circumstances under which a zoning officer could approve without other bodies' review. And they're listed there. I heard representatives of the Neighborhood Alliance express a preference for which of those are better and which are less good. It seems to me the only substantive change that could be made there would be to, in some fashion, require the zoning officer to only check off on the use of one of those options in a specified order. That is, you know, they could not check off on a distributed antenna system if it were possible to co-locate on an existing tower. I mean, we could write a provision to say that. I'm not sure whether the burden on the zoning officer to evaluate the facts of the situation is going to be something that they can reasonably do within existing staff expertise. I'd welcome the parties correcting me if I have misunderstood what is being asked for, or if you have a different take on whether or not that's a realistic, and legally permissible thing to attempt to require. And I see our attorney looking to comment.
Yes, under the legislation that was passed last year, as it relates to co-location, it says a city may not deny and shall approve any eligible facilities request as provided in the section. And the section really doesn't provide a basis for the city to deny requests for co-location. So the order in which I think they're trying to encourage the city to basically adopt, I don't think it's permitted by this legislation. But I'll be happy to look at it further, but I really don't think it's permitted.
Can you take a look at the language just off the top there, and are all four of these items included in what the state statute requires us to approve? That is, distributed antenna systems, tower co-location, and other structure and utility infrastructure location. Are all four of those options?
They're not specifically listed by those identifiers. But again, the co-location, and it says all co-location shall basically be approved.
How does it define co-location, please?
You basically, if you can go up one antenna array is basically what you're saying on top of an existing structure, and it can't be denied. So if it can add to the top of the tower for basically an antenna array on top of the tower, both federal and state law, and it's embedded in the Middle Class Tax Relief Act amendments, which was carried forward in state law. So in those events, in those instances, it has to be approved, it can't be denied, so that's why it was going to the staff level for that reason.
Is co-location defined as including other structures or utility infrastructure, not just existing towers?
It is defined as follows: the placement or installation of wireless facilities on existing structures, including electrical transmission towers, water towers, buildings, and other structures capable of structurally supporting the attachment of wireless facilities in compliance with applicable codes.
And just off the top of my head, hearing the comment, it sounds as though, so regardless of the merits of a hierarchy of preference, that existing federal state law may have taken that option away from us here.
Yeah.
And certainly would invite the parties to research that question between now and whenever the council considered it. But it sounds to me, based on your reading, that you're right on that question.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Councilmember Light, I think Councilmember Bessie hit it on the head. Before Monday, I'd just like to get clarification on whether or not state law and federal law applies to co-location before Monday.
Okay.
And right now, we're sort of speculating. I'd just like to have some concrete understanding before we go in to vote on Monday.
Yeah, Councilman Taylor, it's not coming till the first Monday in February, so you've got...
Oh, we've got plenty of time.
3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, all right, very good. What's the pleasure of the council on the amended amendment?
I'd like to commend everyone for your work on this, and I think that what has been proposed is a quite reasonable proposal that I am comfortable taking to public hearing and seeing what the general public and all concerned parties have to say about that, and I would move that we recommend that.
Second.
Very good. Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Light, the three points that we heard about, the details for the photo simulation, the specific language for the co-location, and the adding the supplemental language to legacy, are you saying that that's part of this amended?
No, we're saying that as it is written.
That is written. Okay.
Because I think unless we get something that clarifies, I didn't ask anybody, but I'm certainly, happy with the leaving out the details of the photo simulation because, as we heard, I mean, these are professionals, and certainly it can be questioned if we, if someone thinks there's something hinky going on. Yes.
I've been trying to wrestle with how would you actually define that photo simulation and how would you sort of control it. Would it be possible to mark a location from which it was taken so that you could then stand in that spot and after the fact go back and say, well, this did really represent what the human eye would see? And that would be a relatively straightforward way to do that.
Yes, sir.
And I could be glad to, I appreciate you asking that question. That's what we do. We do a zone of visibility map that shows where the picture was taken from and an arrow going to the site so that you see specifically from where it was taken. We're very careful about that because we don't want to mislead anyone.
Thank you. And in fact, somewhere in all of this mess, I have some photo simulations, or maybe I gave them back to Liz, but she showed them to us, and so I'm reasonably happy with that. So we're talking about the as written, what we have in front of us. Okay? Yes, sir.
It's already been voted on, right?
No.
Well,
we've got a.
After the vote, I'd like to put in a shameless plug if the chair would permit. Thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Very good.
Shameless plug time? On January the 30th, I know this committee and the council wants to get as much input as possible on cell towers in residential neighborhoods. I want to commend this committee for coming together with a great compromise. I think everybody is happy about where we are right now. The East and the Southeast Ward are our neighbors in geographic location in the city of Winston-Salem. We will be holding a community meeting to discuss this compromise at the Enterprise Center located at 1922 Martin Luther King Drive at 6 o'clock p.m. on January the 30th. January the 30th, 6 o'clock p.m., the Enterprise Center on 1922 MLK Drive, and hopefully the citizens of the area can come out and voice their concerns as well, or their support.
And I'd also, if this isn't already the case, and it may be, I'd like to ask that staff get the proposed compromise version online, clearly marked as quickly as possible, because I would like to be able to communicate that to interested constituents in my ward so that they can go and look at that, see what has come forward with a fairly broad support as a compromise version and get their review of that.
Thank you. Any other comments on cell towers? Okay. G2, please.
Presentation on special small area economic development study.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, council members. Let me just do a little bit of introduction here, and then we got a brief presentation to make you. Hopefully you're all aware of the Piedmont Together regional planning effort that has been sponsored by PART and also assisted with Piedmont Tribe Regional Council, that was funded by a major federal grant that was received 3 years ago. It's a 3-year process. We're nearing the end of it. There's going to be a major public event on March 27th in Greensboro. They've had public events each year during the process, one in Winston-Salem, one near the airport, one in High Point, and this is coming up in Greensboro. It'll be kind of the public culmination of the input on that. And of course, the regional effort is talking about how we can, as a region, a strategy for growing jobs, accessible and affordable housing, improving mobility in the region, making more livable places and spaces, and promoting healthy communities and local food systems. So you've been talking about that a little bit there from a regional standpoint. One of the things that they have done during this 3-year process is to take sort of some design and economic development ideas on the road, and they have with some contractual assistance, have gone to a number of the towns, and the largest city is High Point, and have taken a pilot project and have worked with the community to kind of do an economic feasibility study and do some actual design kind of work to show how kind of a smart growth strategy in an area that needs economic revitalization could take place. They're usually very small areas that they're talking about, whether it's a site or an area around the site. PART has come to us and said that in wrapping up this project, for which all the funds have to be spent by March 31st, they wanted to offer the cities of Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and Burlington each to have a chance to select an area for a study. And so that's why this item is coming before you, so that you can kind of hear what kind of is involved in this study. It's a very collaborative kind of thing, but we got a time clock that's ticking, and the funds all have to be spent. At least the PART funds that come through the grant have to be spent by March 31st. So if you like the study and can select an area for it to occur in, then they are prepared to get going on this if they can time it to get done with at least the part of the study that PART would fund by the end of March. It's a 50-50 match, so it's up to $25,000 from PART, and of course the local match would be $25,000 to go with it. There's certainly a number of areas in the central city that are candidate areas to think about on this. Certainly Polo and Cherry have been talked about before, but there are a number of other areas in the city as well that are economically disadvantaged and are hoping to get more reinvestment as well. So without me going on further, I wanted to introduce Margaret Collins, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Creative Economy, and their offices are right here in Winston-Salem. They are the organization that has done this work in these other cities and towns in the region, and she'll explain to you what kind of study this is and what it would involve. Mark Kirshner from PART is here as well, so I'll turn it over to Mark.
Hello. Hello, how are you? Greetings.
Good evening.
We have it preloaded, so.
And if you would, give name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Margaret Collins. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Creative Economy. Our office is at 119 Brookstown Avenue here in Winston-Salem. And I live at 5212 Cedarwood Creek Drive here in Winston-Salem. So I lead a team of architects, urban planners, and economic developers who have been working with PART. Mark Kirshner is represented here. The Piedmont Together initiative has actually been the body that has hired our team to do this work. So I'm going to just flip through these. I have this presentation, and it's around 10 minutes. Is that good for you? Is that okay? If I will.
Not bad.
Okay, I will be happy to.
On someone's time.
I've been asked to explain our process, and I'm going to use our High Point example. We've also done this work in smaller communities like Elkin, Mayodan, Bisco, and Yanceyville, and as well as the city of High Point. First of all, we work very closely. This is the example of the cover of the report for High Point. We work very closely with the staff and the town city council to make sure that we are selecting a site or an area that is meaningful to the city, that we're going to be doing the work that is necessary, that's important. because it gets the city, we've been able to get the townspeople quite excited and engaged, and it usually results in a lot of really good positive feedback. So when we meet first with the staff and council people, and then we form an action team, and that includes citizens, business stakeholders, and community leaders, and we get them engaged up front so that they can help us with the word, getting the word out, and the publicity, and making sure that the right people are present. Because these result in a 2-day community design workshop where we bring people together and we actually hear their suggestions about the area or the site, both citizens as well as business owners and potential business owners, and then our team actually comes up with visuals and renderings and sketches as well as an economic plan to help actually move the area forward. So we determine goals up front collectively, and then we act on those. And we also develop a survey, an online survey, if that seems appropriate, so that those who might not be able to attend the 2-day workshop can also weigh in on and provide their thoughts and suggestions. So this is the site in High Point that we were asked to work with. It's a 4-acre site. It is totally vacant, and it happens to be across from the Guilford Technical Community College in High Point, and it's surrounded by 3 different community neighborhoods. The city of High Point was very interested. This is a high-density area. There's 19,000 cars that go down South Main Street. It was crying out for development. There's needs from the neighborhood. There were needs from GTCC, and there's nothing right across from the GTCC campus. They have no services that they can access. And this is part of an area that the city really wanted to develop and rebrand and bring in an international flavor and use the arts and change the negative perception of it being a primary low-income area. So they wanted to use this to help rebrand. So as part of this, we actually come up with a flyer. This is an example of the flyer. In this case, it was done in both English and Spanish. And many of the council, the staff people and business people took this door to door to all the businesses in the area to make sure that they knew about it, to try to get them to attend. Very often, especially in the Hispanic neighborhoods, they need to be talked to in person. The housing departments and the neighborhood groups got involved, and they helped get the word out. And our Design Link team goes for a site visit and actually works with and finds out what the needs are and really sees the area very closely. So part of the theme of this, as Paul mentioned, is sustainable design and smart growth. So we do brief presentations on those policies and how it can help your neighborhood and how it can help your community. So smart growth is a theme throughout all the workshops. The other theme and presentation is an economic key findings for the area. So our economic developer actually presents economic and design opportunities for the site and the area and shows the existing numbers and then the potential numbers, what you have and what you can have. And she's very realistic. She's got experience working all over the country, but she lives in North Carolina and is very devoted to our communities here. So in this case, as I mentioned, it's a very dense area where there's 19,000 cars going by. There's 5,000 people at Guilford Tech and 5,000 people in the neighborhood. But all of those people weren't showing up on traditional economic development studies. But she was able to, by looking at GTCC and including that, she was able to explain that this has a lot more potential for economic development than would normally show up on a study. So that was real big news for a lot of the people that attended. This is an example of the survey results. We found that both the community needs as well as the schools' needs were similar. They needed coffee shops. They needed affordable foods. They needed certain services that just didn't exist in that part of their towns. So they gave us lots of good ideas, and then we wrote them all on flip charts. We record everything that's said, and then our team of designers and architects start drawing and start visualizing what could be in this empty space. So it's basically a real good way of hearing what the community wants and then trying to put it into some kind of visible action. So some of the ideas were mixed-use buildings, diverse retail, internet cafe, student housing, international bazaar, of course, ethnic restaurants. And our team created 3 different scenarios. This was a very robust workshop. There were over 100 people attending. We got 3 different scenarios, and I'm going to share with you one of those scenarios. They do a lot of sketching during the workshop, and then and so you'll see some of those. And then post-workshop, we actually then do a lot more detailed work. So I'm just going to flip through these. This shows an urban plaza, and you can see the outlines of those, how it goes from 4 corners to then 4 corners with the access at each point so that people can get through. As I mentioned, the coffee shop was highly recommended by everyone, and so there's a sketch of the coffee shop and how it could be actually out on the sidewalk but also contained. There was a mention of trying to keep the plaza area very permeable to the outside foot traffic moving into the interior plaza. This shows the enclosure of the space with a defined street front, but you have the open access straight into the plaza from the street front, and there shows the permeability so that everything can flow through and it doesn't appear as mass building and not accessible to the public. There's some street elevations. And then we get into the post-workshop where we can do more 3D renderings and sketching that's on the computer. This is an aerial view. Here's a clearer view of the plaza. Going from one of the corners, you could see what they meant. And there's the internet cafe over there on the right with doors that can open and close based on the weather. Here's the other side of the plaza, a very open concept. Farmers market, arts and crafts fair was suggested there. And then here's the view going south on Main Street. The plaza would be open to passersby for community and activities. So all of this represents new construction, but there are things you can do with existing buildings, and I'm going to show you how our team kind of helps you visualize those. Here's this very busy section on South Main, which has 19,000 cars that go across, which doesn't look like it right now, but it. And then here's a way that you can help get those students that are actually at that campus on the right. They couldn't even, if you built something over there, you wouldn't even be able to get them across because it's so busy. But by installing a striped textured crosswalk, your pedestrian refuge island, and some protected areas, you can really make that possible. And then your lights to help motorists identify pedestrians going across, and putting in some landscaping. Here's a typical building that's existing building. It's an ethnic restaurant. Then here's an example of what can be done with some good design, sustainable design practicing, burying the overhead utilities, installing landscaping, and some high-quality lighting and banners and poles. And this just gives a flavor of what could be done in a neighborhood and a community, and it helps get people excited to then go out and make it happen, because you got to give them some visual realities, some hope. So here's another building that has this is a retail strip, and then we show then how different improvements can be made again with the lighting and the landscaping. And then finally, we have the South Main Street, which you've probably all seen, very big street, lots of various utilities, and then how nice it would look if you could bury all these utilities, put the landscaping in, bring in the lights, and add your banners. So that's some of the examples of the drawings as well as the visuals that we did. And we also provide a next steps document where we give your low-cost, immediate things you can do, then your short-term projects, and then your long-term projects. And we basically take in everything that's said, discuss it through with our kind of core action team and our expertise, and then provide that next step document. Then we will come back and present it to your city council if you desire, and we deliver a final report. And that's our team represented right there, the ones in High Point.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. That's very impressive.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
are
you.
there any questions you'd like to ask? I know we are infringing on Mr. Bessie's committee time, so are there any questions you'd like to ask?
Just one question. Thank you, or a comment. Thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to ask the city manager and staff, how soon do we expect to bring this to council to decide on which areas, or what's the timeline on that, Mr. Turner?
We would hope to bring it to you Monday if the committee can make a recommendation on location and the approval of the concept. Tuesday, I'm sorry.
Because
The
the
funding
time.
was in a budget amendment that the Finance Committee recommended yesterday.
Yeah.
For the $25,000 match is in a budget amendment that was before Finance yesterday.
Yeah.
So we'd hope that in order to do this so that they can spend the money by March 31st, there's a lot of advanced timing, so really a selection needs to be made now. February, I think, would be too late to make it.
May I ask, you said Polo and...
Cherry Street.
And Cherry? Oh, neat.
Polo and Cherry, North Ward.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I'm traveling on... Oh, yeah.
Right
yeah,
near,
okay.
kind of like going to Wake Forest or going to the Coliseum. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I can get a little hazy, too.
You get like...
Did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I think there are probably plenty of places. I bet everybody's got at least one in their ward that they would want
You can get a
to
little
have
hazy,
studied. Is that, do we have to make the decision on the location right away, or just the fact that we want to engage?
I think
Really,
we
you need
the
to make the location on the decision on the location before council meeting, or at council meeting on Tuesday.
Dan?
Pardon me for having had to step out a minute, but is there a staff recommendation on location that we have before us today?
We have evaluated the Cherry and Polo site, and it is appropriate size for the money that the group has, that the team has. We haven't evaluated other locations. I know we've heard of other locations that are much bigger than this group could tackle in the available time, but that's the only site that we've evaluated, but we don't have a recommendation for.
It sounds that we're in a authorize something or lose the window.
Yeah.
And given that, I'm willing to forego a more extensive alternatives analysis just because we don't have the time to do it if there's an option before us.
My question is, we're going to go spend 25 grand on this study. Staff feel like there's good potential that we'll get that back in increased property taxes. I mean, I know this is just a study. We're not committing to carry this plan out, but I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here, is spending money to get money back, right?
Correct. If the plan came to fruition, yes, we would anticipate you'd get that back.
Would someone?
The other thing, Chairman Light, staff thought that area was small enough that it could work, but also that it would be a good pilot, that if this is successful and if Ms. Collins' team is successful, we could entertain, even if the city pays for it, all of it directly, we could entertain looking at several other areas in the city, some smaller, like a single site, and some much larger, being, a mile or two long.
No, I'm not on the committee, but I think I'd support whatever recommendation came from the committee. Again, looking at the time frame we're working with this, I agree in terms of looking at it. And I think that Polo Cherry area is one that could use some attention in the process of bringing something. And on the question of the plans, I know we do a lot of plans, and all of them don't come to fruition. Because I know if we dug in some of the boxes around City Hall, we'd see a lot of different plans that were done. But one thing about a plan, if you don't have somebody to consistently champion the plan, it doesn't get pushed forward. So.
But, excuse me, Madam Chair, my question is this the information, or is this for?
No, we have to.
Okay, I move that we accept the presentation on the small area economic development, and also that the location be the Polo Cherry Street area.
Okay. You had a comment.
It's just a comment. I am not on the committee, but I will support the Polo Cherry Street area when it comes forward to the full council. But I'll say that if we spend $25,000, let's make sure that we're not throwing money down a hole, Mr. City Manager. If we spend the money in a particular area, let's come back and really evaluate that area for potential and true economic development. We don't want to throw any of the taxpayers' dollars away.
One more comment, Madam Chair. I think, thank you, Councilmember Taylor and Montgomery and Councilmember McIntosh and all of you for the support of this. But as we've said, a plan is only good as the person that's leading the charge. And I feel like with me helping to lead this charge, that this is going to be successful, and that bringing in other stakeholders in the community, such as Wake and the small business owners and my Latino Hispanic community, and the churches in that area, I think we will be successful at this. And again, I'm going to be leading the charge with that.
All right.
Bravo. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I have a little handout that if you want access to any of the reports we've done, you can just go on our website. That's just a handout about what
Okay,
we did.
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. There is one other item. I don't know if you, we're almost 20 minutes into Mr. Bessie's time. Do you want to, this is just simply a resolution urging the General Assembly to reconsider its decision about not expanding the Medicaid coverage. If you've all read it, we could go ahead and vote on it, or I suppose we could just carry it over to...
Madam Chair, if you need 10 minutes to deal with this, I think you should have 10 minutes
Okay,
to deal with it.
all right. Any comments from the committee? Yes. I was looking.
I'm always the most demanding about resolutions. And when Chair Light raised this question previously, I asked specifically for information as to what made this relevant to city government. And there is information in the proposals specifying a significant impact on city budget, $400,000. Given that's an estimate, it is a legitimate estimate. And the other specific information regarding the impact on major employers, I think, is also locally relevant. I think this passes the smell test on the city government relevant, and so don't feel obligated to object on that basis. On a broader basis, I will say that this is an issue that I'm personally involved in. I think this is one of the most morally compelling issues currently before state government in North Carolina. I consider the refusal to accept federal funding to provide regular health care for up to 500,000 of our citizens to be utterly indefensible. Yeah. Some of the information that's not in the background document here is that it's estimated based on population health data and research that this year alone, calendar year 2014, that the refusal to provide Medicaid access for 500,000 or more of our citizens who would otherwise be eligible, can be expected to result in nearly 2,000 additional premature deaths. This is a no-brainer, in my opinion. It's been caught in inexcusable politics, and I'm happy to see a legitimate nexus with city business that would make relevant this item to city government action.
Thank you, Mr. Bessie, and certainly your call to action earlier today about working further on this is I accept that. So, any other questions or comments?
As we've seen, and we're going to see, continuous policies made that affect not just our citizens, who are the most important people, but it will also impact our ability to be able to make financial decisions that ultimately ripple to other parts of their quality of life, such as police and sanitation. So I think this is, Councilmember Light, due cause. We need to support this. And we do see a lot of resolutions I too, like Councilmember Bessie, I think we need to possibly put together something as to how we do this, because we get them constantly. But if I feel like too, if it has no impact on the quality of life of our citizens or the government of the city, then we may need to think twice about doing that so as to make sure that the impact is felt. So I support this.
May I have a motion then?
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll let Mr. Bessie have his, have his committee meeting. Yes.
We have three of our committee members here, and do any of our staff presenters need a break? Then let's take 3 minutes to transfer the spots to the table, and we'll be ready to roll.
I have a question, though.
Yes.
I know I was tardy for the meeting. I apologize. But on the issues that were housing demolitions that were in the East Ward, what was the end result on those items?
Oh,
There were 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Get the secretaries to tell you that.
My recollection, Councilmember Montgomery, is that we approved 3, and 1 we postponed decision for to the next meeting in order to permit the attorney for Mr. Douglas to provide us additional information regarding whether it would be realistic to expect the insurance to pay off.
Okay. That house burnt down, right?
Well, it's
Yeah.
not burned down. It's burned down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was in the absence of your recommendation, we put it off a month.
Councilmember Light. Point of order.
There's one that's a long committee.
Yeah, Mr.
Have we adjourned?
How you doing, sir? Folks, bang, bang, bang.
So you
My computer right there.